national level, we expect also a lot to be done at the international level. One major issue of concern to us is the need to streamline access to international climate finance to complement national funding. I believe this forum will throw more light on practical ways to mobilize financial resources to support the implementation of national climate actions, especially how we can guarantee a different future from the past and ensure that the commitments of the developed world towards climate finance, which have not been met in the past, will be met in the future. Excellencies, it is obvious that we have to act swiftly and decisively to mitigate these effects and ensure a sustainable future for generations to come. The impact of climate change, as we know, is not limited to the African continent alone. It is a global issue that affects all of us. Thus, addressing climate change in Africa, as President Ruto so forcefully articulated, is a moral and strategic necessity for global climate action. Hopefully, COP28 in Dubai will provide us a concrete roadmap towards that end and ensure a just energy transition for us in Africa. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. A round of applause again for President Nana. Let me now take this opportunity to ask my sister, the President of Tanzania, President Suluhu Hassan, to make her statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Chair of the African Committee of Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, Excellencies, Heads of State and Governments, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, thank you very much for being a gracious host of this august assembly that sets the tone of Africa's growth now and the future. I thank the government and the people of Kenya for the excellent preparation of the summit and the warm reception accorded to me and my delegation. The convening of this important summit is both timely and opportune, as the theme, driving green growth and climate finance solution for Africa and the world, is quite befitting, especially now ahead of COP28, where parties will take stock of our efforts to address the climate crisis and commitment to address both climate crisis in the context of the Paris Agreement and the Climate Convention itself. Excellencies, the stakes are high and actions have to take place not tomorrow, but today and literally now. As Africans, we have no choice but to seize the moment to capitalize on its potential to offer solutions to green growth and decarbonization, and while creating resilience to its our communities and economies. We can no longer afford to address economic development, climate change, and African poverty burden in isolation. The interplay between development and climate change is undeniable, and this interlink demand integrated and coherent solution that will provide opportunity for socio-economic development of Africa. Excellencies, while the continent is highly impacted by the changing climate, it is nevertheless holding the key to solving the climate challenge. The just released Economic Development in Africa Report 2023 shows the potential of Africa to capture technology-intensive global supply chains, and it said it's all about development of Africa with climate change. It provides a unique insight into Africa's centrality to the green transition that will clearly transform our continent economies. It is said that all metals and minerals that are important and strategic for the low carbon transition are abundantly found in Africa. And these are chromium, lithium, natural graphite, nickel, niobium, rare earth metals, silver, and many more. Given the abundance of these minerals, the continent needs to reposition itself not only as a supplier of raw materials globally, but strengthen the value chains by ensuring their conversion into intermediate and final products is done within the continent. As critical minerals, as they were called critical minerals, they have to make critical contributions to our internal revenue collection and employment creation. They also have to contribute critically in the environmental protection in our countries. So having all these, Africa has to stand firm to use the materials for our own development. Excellencies, human capital dividend in Africa is another force to reckon. To avoid the past mistakes in the history of our continent, we need to focus on human capital advancement by training our own people, especially youth, so as to be able to reap from these vast opportunities. We need to consider the climate crisis as an opportunity to address the youth unemployment challenges. Excellencies, beyond the African potentials, we have potentials in our individual countries. My country, Tanzania, is leading the way by demonstrating strong momentum in driving the green growth. Almost 95% of our energy is from hydro and natural gas. We are also leading in nature conservation with almost 38% of our landmass under conservation in various regimes. We are also committed in nurturing the ecosystems that hold the promise of creating thousands of new jobs and unlimited national economic and global benefits. Talking on the offering of critical mineral to the world, Tanzania has huge deposits of some of these critical minerals needed today. Helium is present around Lake Rukwa Basin, nickel deposit around Lake Victoria, graphite reserves at the southern eastern part of the country, and we also accommodate other deposits, critical minerals, including copper and lithium, as well as rare elements. Despite of the above scenario, we, however, need to face the fact that Tanzania, and indeed the whole of African continent, still faces unprecedented impacts of climate change, with limited capacity to finance the mitigation and adaptation needs. And thus, as we head towards COP28, we have to raise an African voice on the establishment and capitalization of a special fund for Africa. The contribution and the pledges which are given by the advanced countries have to say what percentage of those pledges goes to Africa, and not just a blanket pledges. As I conclude, and as you are all aware, Tanzania is hosting the AGRIF Food and Agriculture Summit this same week. The Presidential Summit is on 7th of September, a day after tomorrow. I therefore wish to use this opportunity to once again invite you to Tanzania, and I'll personally be there to welcome you all. Once again, I congratulate you, Mr. President Ruto, for organizing such a successful event, and I look forward to seeing you all in Dar es Salaam. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Another round of applause for President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Now it's my pleasure to request my brother, President Mohamed Yunus Memphi, the President of Libya, to make his remarks. Your Excellency, Mr. President.
Your Excellency, President of Kenya, President William Ruto, and head of the Committee of African Heads of States concerned with climate change. Heads of states, heads of governments, members of the African Union, Mr. Fuka Musa Fiki, head of the African Commission. May I extend my wholeheartedly thanks to President Ruto and the Kenyan people for hosting this very important summit. It is important for Africa and it's important for the whole world. I'd like to congratulate President Ruto for his wise leadership for the African Committee on Climate Change. I value the efforts exerted by the Commission to have a uniformed African stance with regards to all sorts of related matters and all sorts of mutual concerns. Since the inception of the African Union, Africa has always been saying that it should get rid of the historic injustice it's suffering from until now. But we're facing so many risks and challenges imposed by climate change, and it's affecting the whole world. The African Union called on us to work hands in hands, rich and poor, north and south, and to mobilize all our efforts and resources to mitigate those risks and to also adapt to those changes, and to change and transform those risks and challenges to opportunities based on strategic partnership to bridge the financing and technical gap, to empower Africa and the South in general to move forward from the weakest link to the high level of being a partner. And this would give more opportunities for adaptation to the whole world. And that would help us to achieve a sustainable horizontal development. We should undertake quick and urgent measures to eliminate any kind of damages or risks that could be irreparable in the future or could threaten life on this planet Earth. We need more solutions. Africa has always been a promising continent. As you can see in this summit, Africa can provide to this planet a lot if our partners are committed to their pledges. This is a good opportunity to deal with the risks in an efficient way. starting with carbon emissions to green growth, green minerals. All those opportunities to provide sustainability and opportunities for energy sources that can be very well used in environment-friendly uses by bridging the technical and bridging the financing gap and the technical gap, and to have different renewables like, for instance, solar energy, wind, and all sorts of other sources. And also, we need to talk about fossil energy. We need to have some kind of harmonized climate initiatives to face climate change and to stand against the individual interests of some of the industrialized countries. The African continent requests are clear in the documents of this meeting and also in the decision of the African meeting that decided on holding this summit before COP28 in Abu Dhabi. And in the draft declaration of our summit, all these texts helps us to have concerted efforts and to stick to our stance and to call on bridging any kind of barriers between us and other industrialized countries, and to draw together the upcoming stage on basis of partnership, seeking one unified goal and according to partnership. Would like to greet our development partners attending today, the international organizations, the private sector, the scientific research centers, the academia, the civil society, women, youth, and also the participants in the Environment Expo. And after the conclusion of this meeting, which is going to be crowned with our declaration representing the unified African stance, we're going to be able to mobilize our efforts, and we're going all to attend and participate in COP28 to defend the outcomes of our summit here in Nairobi. And thank you very much. Thank you, President Ruto.
Your Excellency, a round of applause for President Memphi again. Thank you. Let me now take this opportunity to ask my brother, Julius Bio, the President of Sierra Leone, to make his statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, Your Excellency Patricia Scotland, the Secretary General for Commonwealth, Your Excellency First Ladies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm pleased to address this high-level session of the African Climate Summit 2023 under the Kenyan presidency and to reaffirm Sierra Leone's commitment to scale up climate action urgently. I must thank His Excellency President William Ruto and the government of the Republic of Kenya for the excellent arrangements made for this summit as African countries seek to address climate change priorities in this critical decade. From coastal kisses with the Atlantic Ocean to the panoramic vista, from the towering cane of the mountains, the Loma Mountain, to our sprawling national parks Sierra Leone is a canvas painted with nature's most vibrant hues. Our golden beaches are a testament to nature's artistry. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, if you've not been to Sierra Leone, I'm inviting you to come. However, beneath our nation's beauties lies an unmistakable urgency. With a median age of just over 19 years, our young population, like the other young populations representing Africa's vibrant future, stand at a defining crossroads. Their legacy, and indeed our collective legacy, is shaped by the choices we make today. The seas, once serenading us with gentle lullabies, now one of rising tides that could erase generational achievements. The rains which celebrated our lands now pose a looming threat. Why Sierra Leone is rich with nature's gift. This very geographical splendor renders us vulnerable. Climate change for us isn't a distant shadow. Climate projections in Sierra Leone include temperature increases, extreme weather conditions, intense precipitation, and rising sea levels. Our shores, symbols of natural grandeur, are receding. Many of our communities face displacement, and our pristine beaches risk fading away, and calamities like landslide and floods have become hauntingly regular. The surge in pests and diseases is another testament to our enduring imbalance. Without swift collective action, we risk witnessing the obliteration of Sierra Leone's invaluable ecosystems, leading to further dislocation of our communities and the devastation of their sources of sustenance. This is not just a Sierra Leone story. It is an African story. And I dare say it is a global story too. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our world is in trouble. But our continent is even more so. The evidence is clear. The time for action is now, but we are running out of time. Grounded in this stark reality, my government remains unwavering in our commitment to fortifying climate resilience, ensuring our people thrive sustainably and harmoniously with nature. In our updated nationally determined commitment, Sierra Leone has defined a progressive pathway forward for cutting greenhouse gases emission from the 2005 levels by 5% by 2025, 10% by 2030, and 25% by 2050. My government is unyieldingly devoted to climate change resilience and adaptation. This includes support for community-based adaptation in agriculture and energy sectors, integrated water resource management, and climate change disaster risk management. We are also poised to improve meteorological services for early warning systems and enhance and protect conservation of natural habitats and ecosystems. Furthermore, our climate change mitigation strategies extend to promoting renewable energy, infrastructure, resilience, and extensive reforestation efforts on at least 960,000 hectares of land. As we engage in country planning we will also prioritize low carbon screening. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to reaffirm our commitment, we have institutionalized efforts against global menace. This global menace. We have established a dedicated Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and a Climate Change, Renewable Energy and Food Security Presidential Initiative led by Dr. Kande Yomkela. We are designing policies and programs and laying the framework for establishing strong partnerships for funding and implementing projects on major cross-cutting thematic areas of national and global significance. Agriculture is the mainstay of our economy. Recognizing the core importance and extreme vulnerability of agriculture in Sierra Leone, we are focusing on resilience and innovation within this sector, leveraging technology and forward-thinking strategies for climate adaptation. Our overarching aspiration, as enshrined in our National Development Plan, is clear. Achieve food and nutrition security by 2030 through climate-smart practices bolstered by renewable energy throughout the agricultural value chain. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, meaningful inclusion and intergenerational dialogue are crucial to achieving SDG 13, to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. In Sierra Leone, we consider our women equal partners for development. We passed the Progressive Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Bill, which guaranteed by law a minimum of 30% representation of women for all appointive and elective positions. My government is committed to promoting the inclusion of women in climate resilience programs and the participation of women in decision-making for climate change adaptation and mitigation governance at all levels. We must harness our demographic dividends on the continent and involve our youthful population in our climate adaptation and mitigation efforts throughout by involving the youth in everything that we do. Sierra Leone's quest for environmental resilience hinges upon our capacity to address climate finance, build local competencies, and refine our legislative blueprints, and etc. Solutions like carbon markets, innovative debt swaps, and novel financial tools such as leveraging our natural resources may be our bridge to surmount a fiscal chasm. Our appeal is clear. Sierra Leone seeks equitable, nimble, and timely access to climate financing. We ask for unbarred access to new climate change adaptation and mitigation technologies and shared knowledge. Our salvation from escalating climate crises lies in collective wisdom and concerted efforts. Another challenge is our institutional prowess in designing programs that attract climate finance is still developing. We yearn for guidance and backing to bolster our legislative architecture, especially concerning forest conservation. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, while shared, the responsibility for climate adaptation and mitigation is not and should not be evenly distributed. Expecting countries like Sierra Leone to bear the brunt of a crisis that scarcely contributed to without robust support from the primary emitters, the industrial giants, is fundamentally unjust. Our stance is unequivocal. We are here to collaborate, not to capitulate. We seek cooperation, not charity. The actions of significant polluters must pivot from mere declarations and vague commitments to actionable, technology-driven reparations. It is a demand grounded in the technical feasibility of climate justice, not just its moral imperative. A unified front against the existential crisis is not just desired, it is imperative. As I close, I implore all of us present, the hourglass of action is dwindling, and the sands of time wait for none. Let's come together, not just in spirit, but in action, but in actionable solidarity. For in unity we find just strength, but not just strength, but salvation. Thank you.
Another round of applause for President Bayo. Thank you very much. Now let me take this opportunity to request my sister again, Her Excellency Saleh Work Zewde, the President of Ethiopia. Madam President, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very important summit. Congratulations to the African Union for organizing it, and for Kenya for being our gracious host, as it is in the tradition of this country. Africa has tried its best to make its voice heard. This is not the first time that we meet to do so. In fact, to speak in one voice and to alert partners of the disastrous consequences. Ethiopia has been on the forefront of this fight. A lot has been done to coordinate our efforts in order to have a strong common position. Common position is indeed always needed in our African Union Forum. Today it's about climate, but the continent's major issues such as peace, stability, progress requires indeed our common position. It has been increasingly difficult to explain to our people, and particularly to our youth, this contradiction. Resource-rich continent and yet poor people. To explain the injustice that has been mentioned many times here today. That is why our summit cannot and should never be a talk show, but a place where concrete actions and actionable actions are being taken. Let me also say that without sufficient research publications, it would be difficult for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to get accurate representation of Africa's special needs and circumstances that would build evidence-based for advancing the key ask of the continent. So it is imperative that as Africa, we prioritize investments in our research capacity to develop scientific publications to inform and guide global efforts to combat climate change. We must emphasize on investing in African research institutions to produce regionally relevant science that can inform the different working groups under the IPCC. This endeavor requires a strong commitment from both African scientists and the international community, accompanied by the financial capacity necessary to deliver this research. Ethiopia has witnessed in the past decades, including the last consecutive years, persistent drought, flooding, locust invasion, where millions were severely affected. We've been carrying out different practical policy and action interventions as a step to contribute to emission removal and building adaptation capacity. Besides, we've also put in place national adaptation plan to build and boost resilience and adaptation capacity. Building climate resilient green economy is one of the pillars of our 10-year national development plan. As per our strategic consideration, we have launched the long-term low-emission and climate-resilient development strategy that has been submitted to the UNFCCC with the aspiration to achieve net zero emission and building climate-resilient development by 2050. The Ethiopian Green Legacy Initiative that has been mentioned again today, that was launched in 2019, has succeeded in planting 25 billion seedlings on the degraded landscapes by mobilizing volunteers throughout the nation. The initiative helped for the development of more than 120 nurseries and created more than 180,000 jobs throughout the country. More importantly, the initiative is intended to inculcate the green behavior in each of our citizens. The greening initiative has been scaled up into fruit-bearing perennial trees, thereby directly linking the initiative with our food system transformation strategy. In the agriculture sector, Ethiopia has achieved notable progress in enhancing its wheat production, effectively transforming a deficit of 15 million metric tons in 2019-2020 into a surplus of 65 million quintals in 2022-23. I think this achievement has enabled Ethiopia to meet not only its domestic need, and in fact commence with exports. This gives me a good opportunity to thank the African Development Bank, and most particularly its president, my young brother, for the support that was given to us. The plan is to cultivate 2 million hectares during the dry season alone in 2023. The success of wheat production is critical for the country's efforts to enhance food security and achieve food sovereignty. In terms of renewable energy production, Ethiopia is also investing on green energy projects such as hydroelectric, wind, solar, and geothermal energy sectors, as well as promoting modern rural cooking technologies. We have successfully run the hydro energy producing projects, including the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, with domestic resources which will significantly make difference in the country's status in terms of social, environmental, and economic needs. Ethiopia is striving to finance climate actions proactively and persistently as means systematically addressing the economic challenges of the country. Accordingly, the government has invested over $82 million from 2011 to 2019, mobilized from domestic, bilateral, multilateral sources, as well as from international climate finance institutions on climate change mitigation and adaptation projects and programs in agriculture, energy, transport, industry, forest, urban development, and health sectors. Despite this investment, Ethiopia still needs to attract and mobilize a significant finance to support its climate-compatible development agenda. We still count on our partners to fulfill their commitments to developing countries and committing themselves for the new challenge of setting new quantified finance goals in the coming years. We also strongly urge multilateral financial institutions to undergo a serious reform that fits for purpose for the needs and circumstances of developing countries, rather than fueling the historical debt accumulated on the shoulders of developing countries and mainly Africa. Our future depends on our decision now. Urgent action is needed in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid worst impact. 8 years after its signature, ensuring the implementation of Paris Agreement is not an option again. As I conclude, I would like to assure you Ethiopia's unwavering commitment to work with our fellow Africans and other global partners to achieve our priorities and the long-term objective of making the planet comfortable for present and future generations. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my dear sister. Another round of applause for President Zewde. Let me now take this opportunity to request Brahim Ghali, the President of Sahrawi Arab Republic. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, and also head of the Committee of Heads of States on Climate Change, and also head of the AU, and also Mr. Musa Fiki, head of the AC, Your Excellencies, heads of states, heads of governments, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure at the outset to extend my wholehearted thanks to the Republic of Kenya, the government of Kenya, and the people of Kenya, and President William Ruto for this gracious invitation to attend this meeting. Would like to thank you for the excellent hospitality, and would like to thank you for all sorts of efforts and generosity for the sake of the success of this great event, which is the Climate Summit in Africa. And our Saharan Republic also is facing the climate change like so many other countries in the world. We're facing all these challenges related to climate change. Meanwhile, we have another struggle to put an end to occupation in my countries due to the occupation because of the conflict with Morocco. And those challenges are intertwined. This situation led to the displacement of more than 200,000 of our citizens. to some territories that are suffering from climate problems, and temperature in the refugees camps are immeasurable. In our occupied territories, the different practices of occupation, which is outside the control of the international law, without any kind of control, it leads to the aggravation against climate change, like, for instance, the problems with fishery, and this depletes our water and agricultural resources for the sake of exports. And this kind of military occupation is sort of a wall and divides our country into two parts. And this deprives the occupied territories from water. And this is a very dangerous environmental deterioration, and this increases drought in our region. It also led to so many deeply rooted changes in the surface of the land, which became more exposed to wind erosion and also water stagnation. There are also mined areas along this wall became inhabitable, and also it has a very limited economic production. Those challenges, huge challenges, required practical measures on our side to deal with the situation. And in this context, we developed our NDC, and we identified through it the urgent measures for adaptation with climate change and mitigation of its limits. And we did that through strengthening development, which is based on renewables instead of fossil energy. And we supported NDC by having an NAP or NAP through the common ministerial initiatives that included several ministries. In the Sahrawi refugees camps, we developed agricultural systems to reduce the use of water. We also developed modern means with lower costs for housing. And the purpose of that is to face the increasing risks of floods, in addition to the spread out of using solar energy in small units. We also have experienced some electricity projects using solar energy, wind energy, and we're using it also in medical facilities in remote and isolated areas. There we use solar energy. Mr. President, although we have a desert nature, but we do have so many resources to provide to the blue economy in Africa. We have long coasts, and it's very good for fisheries. And our coast, which goes as far as 1,110 kilometers, the land there is known for its resources, and of course it's adopted by Ramsar Convention. Those areas are Wadi Saqiya, Bujdur, Dakhla Bay, and Sabkha Imlili. And although all those resources are exposed to climate change, because of the excessive depletion of those resources under occupation, but our country emphasizes that it's committed to execute and implement cautious plans in this area, and this is in harmony with the African initiatives and its goals to protect the African coasts in Africa. In addition to our work or setting out administrative plans for the important environmental areas, and according to the climate change requirements, we're going to work with other countries and have partnerships and with those countries and African organizations to build our national capacities and to exchange experience in relation to the blue economy. The delay of the termination of the occupation by the United Nations, which is the last in Africa, that doesn't mean that we are fully participation in the international global efforts to face climate change and its detrimental impacts. It is illogical that we're deprived of getting the required and allocated financing to face climate change, and we're also deprived of the technical assistance through the climate change mechanism under the United Nations and other organizations. We cannot be deprived from our rights and duty to take part with Africa and the world in this kind of efforts against climate change. And also, we have been coexisting for years and years with those dire and difficult climate circumstances like other countries. We should be represented in the new FCCC and also in the COP. And also we should sign also the Paris agreement and take part in the negotiations, and to also adopt our NDC regularly to the UNFCCC. Our voice is and will be an African voice, and it's going to support the African voice and stance. Sustainable development and the management of blue economy in Africa is strongly related to the way we use to respond to climate change, and we are ready to contribute with our brothers and sisters in Africa and the whole world to achieve the best results and outcomes. I wish you all the best in this summit, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Gali, for that statement. Now it's my humble duty to request His Excellency Evariste Ndayishimiye, President of Burundi, to make his statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mheshimiwa Ruto, na hongera sana kwa maandalizi mazuri ya mkutano huyo. D'abord, rendre grâce à Dieu le Tout-Puissant qui nous a donné ce beau continent.
Thank God for having given us this very beautiful continent and many opportunities for development.
Votre Excellence, Monsieur
Excellency William Samuel Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, our host,
Mesdames, Messieurs,
Excellencies, heads of state and government present, representatives of international and regional organizations, all protocols observed. At the outset, may I thank President Samuel Ruto, the government and people of Kenya for the warm welcome accorded to us. I also congratulate the government of Kenya and the African Union on the excellent organization of this summit, which is being held at the appropriate time. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is one of the greatest collective threats to mankind. In Burundi, the impact of climate change, mainly through drought and torrential rains, violent winds, floods, and landslides are the major factors of displacement of people. To this we have to add the rising of the Lake Tanganyika and the growing land degradation, which push families to fight about the remaining fertile land. According to the findings, the annual loss in Burundi is estimated at $100 million. In these losses, 72% because of flood, 5% because of torrential rain, and 40% of violent winds. Thus, these weather vagaries, in fact, lead to $70 million of loss, and it impacts on the well-being of the peoples, their livelihoods, provoke the destruction of human habitat as well as infrastructures, the proliferation of and the spread of diseases and loss in human life. Over the past 20 years, the 1001 hills of Burundi are exposed to the impact of climate change. Burundi was used to having rainfall of 9 months, but today drought has even grown beyond 4 months, with an unusual season and rhythm of seasons that affect agricultural productivity as well as animal husbandry. Burundi has increased the number of initiatives in order to face this phenomenon. Burundi is in line with all the conventions that relate to climate change. In this regard, Burundi has adopted an environment code in 2021, and one of the policies for environmental orientations taking into account climate change. This program is accompanied by the mobilization of farmers and by putting, that is, the planting of trees in fertile arable lands in order to retain the rain water. Burundi prepared in 2021 its nationally determined contribution, operational plans for adaptation plans also adopted, and according to Article 4, paragraph 9 of Article 4 of the Paris Declaration. At the practical level, Burundi is mobilizing regularly youth on vacation in preparing the nurseries for agroforestry and forestry seedlings, and to plant them during the period of reforestation, and also to have a program that is Burundi since 2018 wants to rehabilitate the degraded forest lands. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Burundi has the ambition by 2040 wants to develop its objectives of development and the protection of environment and the enhancement of resilience to climate change. According to these perspectives, there are many projects that are envisaged in order to consider a climate resilient program. The establishment of agropoles, hydroelectric centers, using photovoltaic cells, and the removal and the processing of waste, and through technological innovation that are adapted to the agricultural and situations where you will have fuel, wood, and other natural gas and biogas which were going to be used. As you know, Africa is bearing the burden of the impact of climate change, although it contributes less than 4% of global warming and emissions. Therefore, there is an urgent appeal to the developed countries to honor their commitments in Paris, made in Paris, and to work in favor of the developing countries in order to mitigate the climate change and also ensure the transition towards a green climate. To conclude, we reiterate our commitment to the Paris Declaration and also the Plan of Action of 2022 to 2032 of Africa as regards climate change and also resilient development. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your comments. Another round of applause for President Evariste Ndayishimiye. Let me now take this opportunity to request the Vice President of Angola, my dear sister, to come and make her statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excelência William Samoei,
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. William Samuel Ruto, Your Excellency, Mr. Azali Assoumani, Chair of the African Union, Your Excellency, Mr. Moussa Faki, the Chair of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, First Ladies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Allow me, Your Excellencies, to present to you, first of all, the regard of His Excellency, Mr. João Lourenço, the President of the Republic of Angola, whom I have the honor of representing in this August summit, attended by member states with the aim of contributing to finding durable solutions to address global challenges related to the climate change on our continent. We would like to take advantage of this opportunity to applaud the government of Kenya for the warm welcome I received, as well as the warm welcome to the Angolan delegation. We would like to applaud the African Union for this important initiative. We would also like to applaud His Excellency William Ruto, the President of Kenya, who is a coordinator of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government for Climate Change. for incentivizing member states to contribute for the process of green transformation of the continent and for the development of the continent, human and natural resources. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, about half a century ago, the environment came to the center of the development, of human development. Just like other regions, Africa has been affected by the global shocks, including the global financial crisis, the increasingly growing impact of climate change, and of extreme weather events such as floods and droughts, which amount to a threat to the African economies, which has had a negative impact on the implementation of the different national programs, and which has been preventing us from achieving our sustainable development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the President of the Republic of Angola, João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, continues to prioritize issues related to climate change through the National Program for Sustainable Development 2022 to 2027, which has defined as a priority food security, family agriculture, local development and adaptation to climate change, the education, health, for greater development of human capital, the creation of inclusive employment, as well as modernization and expansion of national infrastructures, both port and road infrastructures, the development of industrial centers to support the diversification of our economy and sustainable growth. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is a continent rich in opportunities where women and youth are some of the greatest producers of food supplies. Therefore, we must fund initiatives and projects that involve women and youth. We need to finance green employment for the youth in order to increase and strengthen the adaptation and resilience of our communities and promote sustainable development. Angola is fully committed with the implementation of the UN Framework for Climate Change. For that reason, we have been implementing policies and action plans, such as the National Strategy for Climate Change 2022-2035. This strategy aims to address the challenges launched by the Paris Agreement and to assure the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as establish the vision of the African policy for the Angolan policy for 2035. Out of its own initiative, the Republic of Angola is developing a diversified energy program, and today it incentivizes energy transition for clean and renewable energies through the implementation of two projects, which is the project of the photovoltaic panel, which will be producing 235 megawatts, which will help reduce the impact of the greenhouse gas emission to the tune of 935,000 tons a year. We are also building 5 photovoltaic parks in 5 provinces in Angola. When it comes to adaptation to climate change, we have been implementing mitigation activities to help mitigate the impact of the drought in Angola. The country has invested more than $130 million for the construction of the Kafu Channel, an infrastructure that will bring water to the communities affected by the drought, as well as to support agricultural activities, in this way building the resilience of our rural communities. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we acknowledge that the road is long. With regards to technological solutions and innovative solutions for climate challenges, the responsible, sustainable production and consumption. On that end, we are working with the African Group, implementing initiatives that will allow us to honor international commitments, especially when it comes to increasing and ensuring that at least 70% of our energy comes from renewable sources by 2035. Ladies and gentlemen, the damage and the losses Africa is suffering as a result of climate change are high. They have been contributing for social instability. They have been contributing to mass displacement and have been contributing to the existence of conflicts. Angola, therefore, calls for a fairer and more equitable global partnership. Angola believes that the investment in climate projects in Africa will not only benefit African nations, but will contribute for global climate stability. We must act fast. And to conclude, I would like to thank everyone who helped organize the summit, and I would like to reiterate the commitment of Angola towards equality, resilience, and towards everything related to the progress of our beloved Africa. I would like to reiterate our trust in the African Union and in the international community, so that together we can face challenges associated with climate change. Together we can overcome the obstacles and build a better future for our communities, for Africa, and for the world. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Another round of applause for Angola. Thank you very much. Let me now take this opportunity with all humility to ask President Ismail Omar Guelleh, the President of Djibouti, to make his statement. Your Excellency.
Monsieur le Président,
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. President, President Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, may I thank the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, and the brotherly people of Kenya for the warm welcome accorded to us since our arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. It is a real pleasure for me to take the floor at this forum, which is in line with our strategic thought and dialogue and exchange of views for the sustainable development of our continent through the potential which a blue economy affords us. The Republic of Djibouti subscribes to the Moroni Declaration and the strategy of coordination for a mechanism of the coastal countries which alone encompass 13,000 kilometers. Our country is partly desert country and affected by climate change, and this has been imposed also on us. That is why the tertiary economy occupies 87%, while 3% only is for other components. In fact, we have a very important part played in our economy by the port and the sea. In fact, seawater has enabled us to resolve the problem of access to drinking water, and Djibouti has realized its first regime of desalination. That is to say that the development of blue economy is an imperative need for Djibouti, and it is in this spirit that we have worked out a national strategy for blue economy in 2023, and the national vision is the guiding principle for the action of the government. Its partners and the civil society in working in the maritime economy. In fact, we have worked out a 5-year strategy as well as a plan for implementation of a blue economy, and both are aligned to the strategy and the plan for blue economy and the strategy of IGAD for blue economy and inclusive, sustainable economy that can contribute significantly to the transformation of the Horn of Africa. The other sectors identified that in addition to the port and maritime activities are fishery and aquaculture, and also the maritime security and safety. We have renewable energy and telecommunications through the submarine and the sea cables. Mr. President, the oceans transcend the states and they connect all of them. And we should harness this potential in order to create wealth. This is the essential of what it means to develop a blue economy, that is to establish partnerships that will enable us to make use and exploit our oceans, and also a paradigm for action leading to sustainable development. That is why the strategy of blue economy should depend on 3 principles: enhancement of economic activities and the maritime activities, the safeguard of natural resources and ecosystem services, and the establishment and the creation of sustainable jobs and growth. We have to ensure that oceans create opportunities for our peoples. More than 80% of the people of Djibouti live on the coast. That is why we think that inclusiveness, ownership, and the empowerment of the coastal people and communities are essential for the implementation of blue economy before we can think of other world supply chains. We need to guarantee the local capacity, legitimize, regulate, and establish opportunities. Mr. President, the awareness of the possibilities of the oceans by our societies and also is associated to sensitization about the threats and also the threat to maritime and climate change, because this can unleash a dynamic for a better system of protection and sustainable use of marine resources. The preservation and protection of our oceans will guarantee the sustainability of our planet. And this preservation should be accompanied by action, that is, to fight against inequalities and the harmful practices that impede and affect the governance of oceans. Illegal fishing, unlimited commercial and industrial fishing, the dumping in the toxic waste in our oceans are major risks to our planet. This conference should, in fact, be the point of departure for the trajectory of development of our oceans and seas. We are aware of the African potential as regards blue economy, but also our vulnerability. That is, to unleash the potential of blue economy will regenerate in Africa and beyond, and will demand the mobilization of adequate financial resources, because the capacities of our states to take advantage of blue economy remains inadequate. In spite of many commitments made by the international community as regards adaptation to climate change and increase and enhance resilience, our achievements in fact remain below what is expected and what is demanded. That is why Africa continues to urge our partners to develop and honor their commitments, because the development of blue economy is in line with the spirit of sustainability and resilience that is recommended by Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, and is a breath of oxygen for our countries and for our deserts. I thank you.
Another round of applause for President Ismail Omar of Djibouti. Let me now take this opportunity to invite the Vice President of Namibia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellencies, Head of State and Government, Ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to extend warm greetings from the Republic of Namibia, specifically from Dr. Hage Gottfried Geingob, President of the Republic of Namibia, to you, President William Ruto, for your excellent leadership in the fight against climate change and for hosting this very important and timely summit on climate change. I further extend my gratitude to you and to the people of Kenya for the excellent way this summit has been organized and the warm hospitality extended to my delegation since our arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. And as Your Excellency have said, I'm finally happy to have returned home to East Africa. Today, I wish to shed light on the effect and impact of climate change on Namibia and her people. Namibia's geographical location in southwest corner of Africa, with its vast desert landscape and arid climate, make it particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Rising temperatures, erratic rainfall patterns, and prolonged droughts are becoming more frequent and tense, wreaking havoc on the country's economy, on our environments, and of course, affecting our people. Agriculture, a cornerstone of Namibia's economy, is significantly affected. Prolonged droughts and unpredictable rain patterns lead to the reduced crop yields, livestock losses, and increased vulnerability to food insecurity. As a result, farmers struggle to provide for their families and to contribute to the nation's food production. The impact on rural community is thus severe, exacerbating poverty and inequality. Moreover, climate change exacerbates the water scarcity challenges facing our country. With limited fresh water resources and a growing population, the demand for water is increasingly high. However, as temperature rises and rainfall becomes erratic, rivers and water bodies dry up and groundwater reserves deplete. This scarcity not only affects drinking water availability, but also impact on agriculture, industrial activities, and hydropower generation. The water crisis strains communities, hinders economic development, and threatens social and communal stabilities. Your Excellencies, these challenges are not unique only to Namibia, as the whole continent experienced similar, if not worse, consequences of climate change. We need to be clear in our message to the international community as it relates to what some refer to as climate injustices or climate justice. The global response to the effect of climate change in Africa should be characterized by agency, collaboration, and support. Africa, as a continent, is particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change, despite contributing minimally to global greenhouse gas emissions. Developed nations must fulfill their commitment to provide financial and technical assistance to African countries. Adequate funding is crucial to support adaptation and mitigation efforts, improving structural resilience, and promote sustainable development. Technology transfer and capacity building initiatives can empower African nations to implement climate-friendly solutions and maximize their potential for clean energy generation and sustainable agriculture. As Africans, we need a stronger voice, unity, and wield more international influence to bring around the necessary change on the continent for the betterment of our people if we want to realize, and I quote, the Africa we want, in line with Agenda 2063. By working together, we can build a more resilient Africa, mitigate the impact of climate change, and ensure a sustainable future for the continent and all its people. I'm therefore positive that through the Nairobi Declaration, we send a clear message to the international community, and especially to our partners present here at this conference, that the time to act is now. Merci beaucoup, obligation, obrigado, thank you all, asante sana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Now it's my opportunity to request the Vice President of Colombia, my sister, to come and make her remarks. Your Excellency, Madam Vice President. She is the first woman of color to be Vice President of Colombia. Welcome.